Det en glede å ønske velkommen til leder av World Resources Institute Europe. Gi en stor applaus til vår neste innleder, Kitty van der Heijden.
Hi, good afternoon. I know you're all getting really tired, so I'm going to see if I can spice you up a little bit. Let me begin with a little song. You know, as I came here, I was thinking about the song that my Swedish husband sings to my kids. Till Paris ska vi åka på en gris. No, that's not what we're going to do, but there are many people that went to Paris, and actually there was a group of people that went to Paris, and it's 125 years ago. In 1886, a big group of people gathered in Paris for the World Exhibition. And what did they do? They had the most exciting exhibition about what the future would look like. This is a picture of a drawing what the year 2000 would look like. Yes, ladies, look at this. This is the first vacuum cleaner, 1886. They had some more contraptions that they thought of in the year 2000. Not sure how respectful this is to biodiversity and Mother Nature. Not sure I'd be like to steering this bus, but by now we do have submarines, don't we? So they weren't that far off. But maybe they got it all too right. So this is 2000, as predicted 125 years ago. We'll be living below sea levels. Maybe they aren't that far off. We're not there yet, but we're getting damn close. Because things are heating up. Who in this audience is below 30 years? Hands up. Anybody? Okay. Not 1 month in your lifetime, you've seen a temperature below the average of the 20th century. Not 1 month in your lifetime. That's pretty scary. Things are heating up. The 15 hottest years have all been in the past 20 years. And you know, science is getting better. They've learned since 1886. We now have the IPCC, but I'm not sure that the solutions have kept pace. Buy a snorkel, that's what we're going to do. And still, you see me smiling. I'm optimistic, not just because it's in my DNA, because I really think this is not Copenhagen. Not just because food, barring Nomo, is much better in Paris, but there's 5 big reasons why the world is a different place. Let's look at global action. All countries in this world are now submitting national plans, what they aim to do to reduce carbon emissions. We now have 154 countries that have submitted these plans, covering 90% of global greenhouse gas emissions. For comparison, that was just 27% under Kyoto. So when we went to Copenhagen, we had no idea what we were doing, who was coming up with which plans, but now we have the world that have submitted plans in advance. We know what we are dealing with. And yes, they all calculate that in a very different way. Different carbon emission trajectories, base trajectories, carbon intensity targets. But if you add it all up, 154 countries, 90% of emissions, this is what you get. Is that good news or is it bad news? Well, temperature rise is now anticipated between 2.5 and 2.7 degrees based on what we know that countries are planning to do. Anybody here who likes to go to Italy? All right, forget about that holiday destination 100 years from now. It will be as hot as the Libyan desert if we are going to 2.5 degrees. So it's a bad news story, but it's a heck of a lot better than where we would be without these INDCs and without the ambition that Paris is now mobilizing. We would be between 3.5 and 4.5 degrees. So we're not there yet, but we're making good progress. And let's not forget, this is not just about how we reduce emissions. This is as much how we protect poor people from the impact that we have historically accumulated up there in the air. So adaptation to climate change is an important part of the package for developing countries. Why again am I so cheerful? Well, major players play ball. When we went to Copenhagen, who knew what Obama was going to bring? Remember those pictures? Merkel, Obama, Chinese president, last frantic moment. No one knew what to do. Now, Obama has made this a legacy issue. It's changing so fast. Look at what happened. November last year, China and US coming together. Historic agreement. Before Copenhagen, China had no intention to reduce carbon emissions. In Copenhagen, they said we'll reduce carbon emission per unit output, per GDP. Then last year they said we're going to peak our emissions. Now they've said we're peaking in 2030. If China peaks by 2030, and probably even before that, and we'll start having 20% of renewables, that's just not evolution. That's a revolution, and it's going 15 years from now. And if you think that's only a man's game, well, very often, unfortunately, it still is. Look at the power ladies up here. The power ladies that agreed that they would go for a decarbonization of the global economy during the course of this century. And Dilma Rousseff going for an emission reduction target of 43% from base year 2005 in 2030. And that despite the fact that Brazil is having a major recession. So dynamics are changing. Dynamics are changing, politics are changing. It used to be that the climate scientists yelled and yelled and yelled and yelled, and the politicians didn't want to hear it. Now climate science is generating tractions, and we see actually that political leaders are taking action faster than ever before. Climate finance. Our honorable minister from India was talking about this. We will never get a deal unless the West will cough up the resources that they promised developing countries to deal with the impacts. 100 billion was promised by 2020. We now see finally that the multilateral development banks are stepping up to the plate. Look at the Asian Development Bank, promised to double its climate finance to 6 billion in 2020. That's no small money. UK promised to double. President Hollande from 3 to 5 billion. And China went from 10 million to 3 billion. By the way, I hope Norway can also come in with a little extra pledge. Now, 100 billion is of course a lot of money, but it's nowhere near enough to get us to a 2-degree or a 1.5-degree world. What we actually need to do is not just look at the 100 billion, no matter how important that money is, particularly for poor countries, but it is shifting the trillions. We know from research that the coming 15 years, the world is going to invest no less than $90 trillion. $90 trillion in 15 years in just 3 sectors of the economy. In energy, in land and food security, and in cities. Whether we will have a 2-degree world or not will depend on what these investors are going to do. Will they do it the low-carbon way? Will we look at avoiding deforestation, at energy efficiency, at public transport? Or would we do it the business-as-usual way? The additional cost of going low-carbon is 4 trillion. Now, that's not small money, 4 trillion, but it certainly is a feasible amount of money. And if you didn't believe it was feasible, but look at what the Bank of England has just said. Mark Carney just recently said, over a month ago, we have to start decarbonizing our economy because we are running financial risks. That is because carbon accumulates over a long period of time. And the horizon of the average CEO, bank governor, parliamentarian, or politician is in the next 3 years. But action is already happening. Let me look at clean energy before. Coal is the new tobacco. As Michael Liebrich already said, coal is in terminal decline. We're not going to get it out of the ground. The G7 has already promised that they will go for a decarbonization of the global economy towards the end of the century. Now, it should have been mid-century, but it's a big progress from where we're. Why are they doing that? Well, partly because it's risky, but in a large part because of the pictures that Michael showed. This is costing economies a lot of money. All these people that go sick, all the economic costs of carbon emissions. And it's also fast becoming economically rational. Wind energy is now the cheapest source of electricity in Germany and in the UK, even without subsidies. Who would have thought that at the time of Copenhagen? Why is it happening? Because we see massive investments, disruptive technologies being developed. Patents, all new patents are in the green economy. The gray and the brown economy is going out of business. Look at India as an example, just one example of what they're doing. How fast is solar growing in the world of India? And let's look at you all here. Business used to be the enemy of green. Now it is business actually making huge progress. They're asking political leaders to change. We have mayors of the city, including here in Oslo, that said, we have to change. We want to go green because it's good for citizens and it's good for our growth. We can restore landscapes and sequester carbon, bring poverty alleviation to people. And we can do what you're doing here. Mass mobilization, because it isn't going to happen unless we put pressure. Look at this guy out there on his own. And we all thought, he's only the Pope. What influence can he have? He'll never be believed, will he? Well, Republicans, this is the poll from last Friday. 60% now believe that climate change is real, up from 47 just 6 months ago. I'm not saying that's all the Pope, but let's. So, I'm going to wind down. We're not there yet. There's still a few elephants in the room that came from Bonn as we finalize the last official negotiations. What are these elephants? Well, we have a few bridges that we still need to build. One, we do not have a 2-degree world coming out of Paris. We know that. What we need to embed in that agreement is a ratchet-up mechanism that every 5 years we come back. We can never renegate our ambition levels. We can only go up. If we do not do that, we're going to be at a standstill. We need to embed what you have here, a zero-emission long-term target by mid of this century. That will send a signal to investors that decarbonization is happening and that the politicians are actually taking this serious. We need better accounting rules and we need more climate finance, particularly for poor countries. This is not a rich man's world. This is a poor man's world. That's where the impact is being felt. And of course, in the end, if you look 125 years out from now, it's the year 2140. You know what that world looks like if we don't do anything? I think these guys too will want a change, and we depend on you to help us get us there, even with those folks. Thank you.